itch or anything, now's the time to do it. If you have an itch or anything, now's the time to do it. Have music on here. So the good thing with the software I use, anything higher than a certain level, it implements. So I'm not worried about people talking about it.
Trying to get his attention?
Huh?
You want to try to get his attention for the...
I don't know if you know how to do it.
But he can get one of the girls to do it.
Okay, we got about 3 minutes left.
Yeah.
One better. I'll go ask him myself. There we go.
Yeah. Look at that. Oh, that's out.
All right, you can't. You're too late to watch the Cubs. They blew it. I'm good, bro.
That's many for y'all. What about? Oh, he didn't come here just No, sorry.
Oh, I see it.
We just cheers. Like, no, I'd be customary to do the shot, we just cheers.
Okay.
24 it is.
Just as a heads up, I don't get any money from this. It all goes, anything that would have gone to me goes to Nami, Iowa. Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that when we put the marathon runner up.
Yeah.
And you can talk about whether.
Yeah.
Liz, you want those? Ready?
Yep.
Welcome to the World's Drunkest Podcast. This is your boy, G. This is Drinks and Things. My special guest, Jeff Hefe Geiken.
Yeah.
Hey, this show is brought to you by Brown Dogs Farm, located in Milwaukee, Iowa. Uptown Garage. Good times, cold beer. If you listened to us before, you know it's customary before the start of every episode, we do a shot.
Yeah.
We just cheer. I feel like people get disappointed when we don't do our shots.
Maybe one to sign off with?
Yeah, we have one to sign.
That way if I get sick, then
You
we can go to standby a lot.
You
lot
get sick,
faster.
you'll blame it on me.
Yeah. I learned a long time ago I'm not very good at taking shots. They tend to bite back right away. So,
Hey, bro, this is part 2 of our mental health tackle mental health mini series, right? And it was important to me to have you on this show, right? So what we like to do, Hefe, is get a little background on our guests before we get into the meat and potatoes of our show. So why don't you give our listeners a little bit of background on yourself?
yeah. My name is Jeff Geiken. My nickname, I go by Hefe, especially when I'm fundraising or trying to advocate for causes near and dear to me. I have been dedicating myself to being an advocate and fundraiser for the last 10 years, really ramping things up the last 3. Besides not only just being an advocate, I also consider myself someone that's actively battling depression and anxiety. And I also consider myself a survivor.
Right on. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in West Des Moines. I went to the West Des Moines School District, graduated from Valley.
Valley boy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah, back in college. You're from Valley. Gotcha. After graduating from high school, I ended up graduating from the University of Northern Iowa and then moving back to West Des Moines before moving to Pleasant Hill, where I reside now.
And then another reason I wanted to have you on this, not because of your incredible story, but Hefe and I worked on something previously together a couple of months ago, and this dude struck me as a person that's just extraordinary, man. You know, we find ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and that's how you stood out to me, bro. So I really, really wanted to have you on the show. After I put out a call, I was like, how many people experience, and May is Mental Health Awareness Month, experience mental health illness episodes, and who was willing to share. And you was one of the first people to step up. I initially thought about doing one more show, but with the amount of people that decided to step up, I was like, man, we're gonna keep this going because mental health awareness is not prevalent in just 1 month. This is a year-round situation, right? And so it was really, really important for me to extend that olive branch to anyone who was willing to share their story, because everybody's story is important, right? No matter what your upbringing is, your background is, your occupation, it affects so many people in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about, let's talk a little bit, you know, you're a mental health advocate and fundraiser. Let's talk a little bit about your background when it comes to advocacy. What made you want to go into the realms of?
I think the biggest thing, things that sparked a lot of more in-person advocacy was the loss of my cousin Owen, who unfortunately chose to end his battle with depression 2.5 years ago at the age of 26. But as someone that's been battling anxiety, depression, panic attacks since I can remember as early as 12, it just seemed like growing up that was something you did not talk about. That was something you kept quiet because for anyone for you to tell that to, that was a weakness for you, and that made you vulnerable for either them to think less of you or them to hold something against you. And at a certain point, it just became too much, where I was going through too much silently, and I felt more needed to be done. And so I became more open with my experiences going through depression and anxiety.
Right, and so you're saying your own issues drove you to become an advocate for mental health?
Yep, I remember, being almost forced to go to therapy when I was in elementary and middle school, and I thought this is the stupidest thing. I'm not weak. I don't have these problems. And what it boils down to is that you're not weak. And in fact, for me, seeking that out after where it's not a requirement, or I'm not being forced, or even being able to have friends go through this. And it's one of the strongest things you can do is realize that, hey, maybe I can't do this, and maybe I do need a little extra help.
Okay. So, walk us through your mental health journey.
Yeah. A lot of things, I'm not saying my childhood was rough growing up, but there were some certain aspects that kind of were different than a lot of other children growing up. But one of the things that really had me reaching out was in college. When I was at the University of Northern Iowa, I had an opportunity to go and live in Germany for 3 months on a military base and work on the daycares. And had this whole community, and then all of a sudden I was carrying a cooler and I tripped, and the disc in my lower back exploded. And I had to go a month still in Germany, not getting proper medical care, and trying to just it's probably nothing and go away. And when I got off that plane, I couldn't hardly walk. I'd be assisted off, and then within a short matter of days of going in and getting the treatment, they were scheduling me for my first spinal surgery. And then all of a sudden, that whole organization, that whole group of people that I considered a community stopped talking to me.
Your friends?
Yes. For fear of, yes, they were told possibly, don't, he might lawyer up or whatever, and because he got hurt while he was on the job. And so they were kind of saying, can't really talk to him, or they just kind of pulled back. So I kind of lost that community, and then having that surgery and feeling like I'm 22, 23, and I am so dependent was so hard, because I walked with a cane for a year and a half. While trying to go to class, they had me on so many meds that I had to lay down all the time. I was almost bedridden, and I did that for a year. And then the first surgery was supposed to give me another 10 years before I'd have to have another one, and it lasted 7 months before we were having another surgery, where they actually did a much more significant spinal fusion on that disc, which then that's another 6 months of downtime, wearing a turtle shell, back brace. It was really empty, really dark time. Trying to go to classes, try to maintain some sort of social life, knowing you can't work, feeling like you're just a burden on everyone. Just made me feel so empty. And thankfully, the University of Northern Iowa had a wonderful student health program where not only did my primary care physician there, I had also a great therapist that I could go to at least once a week, if not sometimes twice a week. And I had made new communities, new friendships. So it still exists to this day. And one in particular was a professor by the name of Pt2. And I still talk to her at least once a month, because I was going through all this, and she basically paid for me to get a second opinion, helped me get that second opinion lined up. And then when I told her, I'm like, I can't take the money, she said, shut up and take my money. I'm going to take a special interest on my students, and I'm taking one on you, so just take the money. And really what that meant to me was there's people out there that don't know me, but are willing to take that chance to help their fellow person.
So it was an outside incident that really caused...
Even to this day, I still struggle with a lot of
So, all right.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the incident. Walk us through your mental health journey now. What are some of the things that you have trouble with, or some of the things that you suffer with?
So now that I'm healthy, now physically looking healthy,
right.
But unfortunately, I was in a car wreck a couple of years after that, and I had to have in 2020 artificial discs in my neck. and there's still they were able to repair 2 discs, but there's still a third one that is not. They couldn't fix it unless I want a fusion, and I'm trying to avoid that at all costs. But I deal with what's known as an invisible disability, where I don't have a cane, you can't see, like I don't have a cast or a neck brace or something. So you assume that, like, many people will say, well, he's just fake, and they're like, I've had a bad back, like, you know, like my back sore, I slept wrong, and I had this, and so a lot of anxiety and stress has come out of job security, knowing that even just the slightest move can be able to move for 2 or 3 days and I'm miserable. And then just that stigma of what an invisible disability is has been very challenging to overcome. And then you tack on that anxiety and depression that comes with that. It's not a fun company to be around.
Right.
You try to put on your face, sometimes you need to break. You break and
what would you say? You talk invisible disability. What would you say has been the hardest part to get people to understand what you go through? And the reason I say that, when you talk mental health, there are people that have never dealt with it, don't really understand. One of the things, and the false stigma around when you talk mental health, people automatically go to PTSD, things like that. There's people that haven't really been, and not in your case, have been in traumatic situations that still struggle with depression, anxiety, things like that. Let's talk a little bit about your depression, because that's a bulk of the conversation that you and I have. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about your depression.
So I struggle with depression every single day. And thankfully, I am taking meds to help regulate some of that. But even then, there's still this low, things are never going to be right. I don't know that happiness is in the cards for me. I think I'm just meant to be here to suffer. These are the things that my brain keeps trying to tell me every morning, anytime there's a minor inconvenience, and I have to be able to tune that out. But at the same time, you try to keep that baseline. Keep it at baseline, even if it might be, maybe not happy all the time, but it's tolerable. Sometimes even the best days are going to be some of the worst tomorrows. You almost fear going and having a really good time and being engaged with all these people and just having a wonderful experience, like a vacation or just a little getaway, because you've left your baseline, you're up top, you're riding this high. But when that is over, you don't just go back to your baseline and go back to normal. At least not in my situation.
In your experience?
I go just skydiving
you go past the baseline?
I go into the basement where I'm just like, and even at times when things were really getting bad, I would have to, my brain would be like, you should just do yourself in right now, because it's not going to get any better than it was today, because tomorrow's going to be so much worse.
Yeah.
And so it's really having to fight against yourself, or fight against those internal thinkings, and you're going to take that nosedive. And yep, tomorrow's not going to be that great, but you have to climb back up and get to that baseline.
So what in your life or what in your mind allows you to give yourself a chance to experience tomorrow? And I know that's a tough question.
Yeah, no. Really, it was seeking out mental health, counseling, medication, even being able to, before I knew I was advocating for it, just being able to talk to somebody and go, yeah, I'm not feeling this. I'm having a rough day. And to know that I'm around trusted people, that they can go, okay, yeah. It doesn't mean I'm going to snap off on somebody. It just means like, hey, I might just be a little quieter than I'm normally. but also being able to recognize those tendencies within yourself, and learning those skills from either counseling and even decompression, trying to decompress as quickly as possible with breathing techniques, hand skills, has just really, you're building yourself a toolbox. You're creating a toolbox for yourself, and you're continually putting tools in there that's going to help you along the way. And sometimes, that tool isn't going to work anymore, and so you trade it in for something else.
So, when you do these things, and I don't want to trigger, and I know trigger is a buzzword right now. When you talk about mental health, everybody talks about triggers. Where was that moment when you said, I need help?
Yeah, that's a I don't even know what the spark was when my folks brought me in, but I think it was really like going through high school. I had teachers that were mentors that I could really have conversations with. I had a school counselor that was really helpful on kind of managing a lot of these hormones, a lot of these emotions that I didn't know what was happening. But once you go to college, it's kind of like you're on your own. And I remember having an episode at one point where I had already been through the one surgery, and it was something that happened with someone that I was hoping to, I thought we were on the right page in a relationship, and it didn't go well. And I just kind of lost it. I just was like, the rug pulled out. I was already not in a great state, and so I started taking medications, not as they're supposed to be taken, and to try to help calm me down. Like, this is supposed to help calm me down. Why aren't they helping me calm down? To a point where I realized that I am at a point of no return, and I either stop and I call, or my best friend is going to find me, and I, rather than call him, I called two people I still had connections with through the previous organization. I said, I just need someone to come take these meds away. Just help me out. And so they came over. They were more hysterical than I was. They were like, and I almost had to calm them down. And then my roommate showed up, and that's when I kind of realized, like, yeah, I'm gonna call the people, and I'm gonna call my doctors tomorrow, and we're gonna make sure that this gets done. And I gave him my meds. I gave my roommate my meds, and I said, how about this? The action plan now is you're going to hold on to these, and when it's time for me to have them, I'm going to reach out, I'm going to walk away, you're going to take them out of wherever you hit them from, and you're going to give them to me until I feel comfortable being able to handle them again. And that best friend of mine, we've been friends since we were 14.
So when you talk about that and getting help, was that a tough thing for you to do? Getting that help, was that tough for you to do?
No, I don't think it was, only because of what my parents had kind of set up for me. That they had, made me go back when I was 12 or 13, and it allowed me to kind of get rid of that stigma. Like, there's no white coats or straight jackets. Like, you actually get to talk to somebody that is there for you. Like, your time is their time, and you can kind of work things out, even if it's just talking. And there's no resolution, but at least you get to yell a little bit, and you really get to express how much it makes you feel and what it makes you feel in detail. That was one of those things. It's like, that helped back then. I think this would be a good thing. and having the trust of my care team, which was a doctor at the student health center,
Right.
say, I want you to go see somebody, and this is what you're going to do, and being able to have that trust that they're advocating on my behalf for all this stuff, but then they want me to advocate for me as well. I thought, okay, I have full trust, and I kind of know the process, and I was at kind of wit's end. I didn't know where else to turn that wasn't a more permanent
Solution.
Yeah.
Quote unquote solution.
Yeah.
That's not a solution.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Let's talk a little bit about your advocacy.
Yeah.
Going up to the hill with these fabulous shirts that
Yeah.
we're wearing right now. 988. Call for help.
There is hope.
There is hope. What made you wanna do that?
So, about 8 months prior, I was sitting at home, about ready to go to bed, and I got the phone call from my folks, and they were letting me know, hey, and so I think I was 32, 33 at the time, not in a great place anyways, but not going to counseling, I don't even think I was on medication at that point. We were trying to figure out the early stages of it, but my folks called me and said, your 26-year-old cousin has killed himself. For me, I was in shock. It didn't even dawn on me. I'm like, no, like, okay, thanks, but like, I'm gonna wake up tomorrow, like, I'm gonna go to bed and we're gonna be good. And then I woke up the next day, and it took me almost 24 hours to process that Owen was no longer going to be around. And I had seen him, 3 months prior, and one of the last photos I have of him was at the restaurant he worked at, Eatery A. He made me one of the best old fashions I think I've ever had. So I had two of them, took a photo. But that night, it really did finally hit me like a sledgehammer. And so we had his celebration of life, I think like a week later. And I remember it wasn't a funeral. It was a celebration of life.
Yeah, we do a lot of those down in the Orleans, man. Like,
it was good music. There were some really powerful speakers. And it wasn't, he was not one that went to he didn't have a certain religion or anything. It was, you care about the people you're around. You do what you want, do what you can with them. And that was what gave him such a sparkle to so many around him. That was what made him so admirable. And that's also what made it so devastating, was the guy that everyone knew they were going to have a good time with, have a good conversation with, maybe go on a longboarding trip. Like, they knew when he stood up for what he believed in, and he had the greatest fashion sense. I think he still had some of my grandpa's clothes. At least he could fit into.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the picture that's on the screen.
Yeah, so that was during COVID. And he had just bought a new guitar, and it wasn't new, but it was new to him. Like, this thing was like a 1960s guitar, and our grandma, who was in her mid to late 80s at that time, was living by herself. So we snuck out with a couple beers, and Grandma's got her hairnet on, she's got the rollers in, and we got to be able to just go and see her during this in a safe. We broke the rules. We broke the rules. But he really wanted to show Grandma the guitar he bought, and we had an absolute blast with that. But I remember though at his funeral, they said, "Is there anyone that wants to tell a story or wants to get up and talk?" And I just remember getting up and speaking to that whole crowd and just saying, Owen was one of those guys that you knew you were going to have a good time. He took on, if you had a problem, he was willing to listen, bend that ear, but take on the weight of the world. But at the same time, you got to make sure that you are taking care of yourself. You've got to make sure that you're also tending to your own needs, because we can't afford to lose another Owen.
Yeah.
There was only one, but do something for yourself. If you're going to do anything in his memory, it's okay to be not okay, and it's okay to ask for help. It's one of the strongest things you can do.
And I always say every Sunday you see my Facebook post, man. Saying that you need something is a sign of bravery, right? And I always say I have the,
Yes.
people listening, I have those 3 questions.
You okay?
Man. Are you okay?
Good.
Are you good? Do you need anything? It's okay not to be okay. Saying that you need help is a sign of bravery.
Yeah.
Right? And then, so I'm gonna ask you
Yeah.
probably a tough question.
Yeah.
But I hope that I have your respect enough to ask this question. Did Owen ever reach out to you saying that he needed
No. We had just started kind of rekindling our relationship as cousins, and it was just because my dad and his brother were so far apart in age. It just that was the relationship was a little bit different. And I have 2 older brothers that are 8-10 years older, so it was even different for me and my older brothers. But it's just one of those things, we're not kids anymore. We don't have anyone saying this or that. We can do. We live in the same town. Why aren't we making a better effort? We had talks of writing music. We had talks of I don't know how to write music, but I was thinking, hey, I've got some lyrics, and he's like, well, I don't really sing, so I can, and he was a gifted guitarist, and he even did a thing. He got to go to a Grammy camp and record it, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful song that he's a part of, and he didn't leave a note. Not that necessarily would mean more closure. I think it might mean more questions. But the 2 people I know outside of his roommate that he talked to before he ended his life was one of his best friends, Hannah, who I've been able to get to talk to a lot more, especially about our mental health journeys. And then my grandma was the last person he talked to, and she had called him earlier that day to ask, hey, let's get you on that affordable health care plan. Let's get you going. We'll get someone to help you with the paperwork, and left a voicemail. And he called her back an hour later. He's like, "Are you all right?" She's like, "What do you mean?" He's like,
She called him?
She called him and left a voicemail. He called her back because he was worried about the tone of voice that she had, and he was checking in to make sure. He's like, well, I'm worried about you. You seem kind of down in that voicemail. And she goes, no, I just was stumbling over the words. I couldn't remember what I wanted to say, and I was just stumbling over them. He's like, are you sure? Because you don't seem okay. And this is Owen talking to my grandma, or our grandma, and she goes, no, I'm fine, babe, I'm fine. He goes, all right, well, I love you. And she said, I love you too, babe. And that was the last family member
that he talked to.
He lived with a roommate, and the roommate they had a decent conversation from what we know, and the roommate went to go take a shower, and he went into his roommate's room and grabbed a gun, went into his room, closed the door, and then now that's where the questions start being asked. And to this day, my grandma is still, we all struggle with it in different ways, but at 87, 88, it's just, she just doesn't know. She goes, I should have recognized something more. I should have known. I should have asked more questions and
kept-
really
And that's the thing.
that's the
right?
guilt.
The guilt, right? You
There's
think
nothing
you
she
keep
could have
people
done.
on the phone longer, and there's really nothing that she could have done.
There was no signs. There were no signs that he was. I mean, that's why he was checking on her to make sure she'd be okay. That was like one of his that selfless act of like, I'm gonna make sure she's okay. And I don't know what's going through his head at that time. And I won't try to put words in his mouth and try to say something he stood up for that maybe he didn't. And I know there's a lot of anger that came out of this too from different family members. And I know that's one of the processes too, is anger. You know, and I kept hearing, oh, it's a permanent solution for a temporary problem. And it's like, I'm not mad at it. I wish things were different, but I'm not mad at it.
So you said before that he never gave you any indication.
No, he
like
didn't.
you have some people that say that, like you have family members that told you that they're running from sadness. He gave you no indication of
No.
that. You know, and the reason I asked that question, I have a saying. Every time we do these mental health shows, and I say, check on the happy people
Yeah.
too. Now, I say
Check
that.
on your strong friends.
Check on your strong friends, check on your happy friends. I say it all the time because we don't know what we don't know, right? And then another thing that I struggle with personally is that when people choose to do that, I feel like their minds are already made up, right? And there's nothing that you there's nothing
Yeah.
that you can do to possibly
There
stop
are,
it, right?
I think that's one of the first things.
If you don't know, let me
Yeah,
preface
go ahead.
that if you don't know, let me say this: if you don't know what the person is going through, there's really nothing you can do to stop it. Right? You can see signs. If you see signs, please act.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
But if there's so many people that don't show the signs.
So I don't know if I think the first questions when you call 988 or you talk to a crisis counselor is they're going to ask you, do you have a plan? Do you have a plan in place?
Right, yeah.
Do you know what you're
Yeah.
going to do?
I was going to get into that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then sometimes it's really, it is like you kind of had that plan, but there's something that set you over, but you didn't know that you'd ever, and I can't speak for, again, I won't speak for him, I won't speak for others that have chosen to end their battle with depression and anxiety. But I don't think it's just like all of a sudden one day, like, okay, today's the day. I think there are moments that might trigger that and spur that, and the thing you'd been thinking about is now finally there, and you can think about it. But,
You talked about your battle with depression. Is that anything, other things that like you battled with depression?